are some nonfiction recommendations from a person who barely reads nonfiction. I am not really a nonfiction reader, or at least I haven't been historically, but lately I have been getting into it more and more, and I'm like, I really need more of this. But I wanted to do this video specifically because it's Nonfiction November, ladies and gents, so thought I would participate in this somehow by recommending some of the nonfiction that I have read. And two, like I said, I have just recently been getting more into it. Memoirs and like just funny things, like more David Sedaris and stuff like that. Like, I cannot wait to read more of that all of a sudden. So, hopefully next year when Nonfiction November comes around, I will have a plethora of titles that I can recommend for you guys to read. I guess this is also a third reason I wanted to make this video, because I know that people can see nonfiction as being boring, because I've been there. I get it. But I have with me a selection of nonfictions that literally have made me laugh out loud. Some of the books I haven't read yet. Can I say that? Some of the books I have not read yet. I will differentiate between the two. They're books that I predict will probably make me laugh out loud as well. I just want other people to know that there are nonfictions that aren't completely boring. I don't know. I'm just here as a novice nonfiction reader, just trying to show you some things that maybe you'll like and pick up if we are in any way aligned when it comes to reading tastes. So the first book that I have for recommendations is Wow No Thank You by Samantha Irby. This is a collection of essays. I actually just talked about it in my last wrap-up video because I read it in October. It's pretty fucking funny. I wish I had marked the essays that I found the funniest. I did not do that. That was dumb of me because I can't think back to what they were exactly. But just know that there were times and moments when I was like, baha, like that was actually funny. This book basically is just a bunch of personal essays written by Samantha Irby, and it really just talks about navigating her 40s and like how she got where she got, if that makes sense. I mean, they're just personal essays, you know? How much more can I fucking say? She has a very funny voice when it comes to writing. She finds a way to make things sarcastic, entertaining. I really enjoyed it. So much so that I plan on reading another book by her, which is another recommendation that I have. Did you see that segue? Was that good? We Are Never Meeting in Real Life. This is another essay collection by Samantha Irby. I have not read it. Something funny, when I was reading this book, I saw this book at the Goodwill, and I was like, oh my god, okay, this is a sign. I need this book. And I have, like I just said, I have not read it, but I expect this to be just as funny. She's realistic in her essays, and she just speaks with like raw truth. I've listened to the audiobook for this, and I plan on doing so with the other book. And I really like doing that because it's narrated by her, and that always puts a little extra something there, doesn't it? Here are some funny essay collections that you might want to pick up. She also has a third book called Meaty, and that was actually her first one. And this is also a collection of essays. I know nothing about it really, except for that it's her first one and what the cover looks like. But if this at all sounds interesting to you, then there you are. The next book that I'm here to recommend for you is Theft by Finding by David Sedaris. This book I have talked about on my channel before in my September wrap-up because I read it in September. This is basically diary entries written by David Sedaris from the years 1977 to 2002. Yeah? Basically, he just writes as much as he can. Just little things that happen throughout the day, or like jokes, or like conversations that he had, observations that he made. He would just write like at least something in a big journal. Not every single day. For some years there was like 3 entries or 4 or something like that. I mean, he still was consistently writing. Like, that's still impressive as fuck. I have tried so many times to like keep up with a diary or a journal. It never fucking works. It doesn't. I forget about it every single fucking time. So the fact that David Sedaris could have gone all these years without doing it, and not only stopping at 2002, but this is also bringing in another recommendation that I have. He has a second book that is from 2003 to 2020, and it's just more journal entries. I plan on reading that book. I have it on my Libby, because David Sedaris, by the way, if you don't know him, like, he's really like known nonfiction author. He writes a lot of essays and short stories and stuff like that. I actually have more books to suggest by him in this video too. These journal entries were funny, as well as I really liked the fact that we really were like taking a step into history, seeing what the nuances of life looked like in the 70s, like in 77, 78, 79, and then the 80s, and then the 90s, and the early 2000s. Like, all of like that mixed with like the humor, I just loved it so freaking much. I really enjoy learning about David Sedaris' life. I cannot lie. So I do plan on reading all of his books, and so far, I mean, I've read 2. I've only read 2. Wait, why did I feel like I read so many more? But I have Me Talk Pretty One Day, and I have the one with the skeleton smoking on the cover. It's right over there. I don't know what it's called. So yeah, that brings me to my next book suggestions. Calypso is a book that I just recently read, like literally like 2 days ago. I loved it. Wow. So here's the thing. This book was really fucking sad because it touches on his mother who has passed away, and it also talks about one of his sisters who has passed away, and it's like a lot about that. Basically, David gets a beach house, and before his mom died, they would always go to the beach house every summer. Then when his mom died, they kind of stopped doing that, and then David gets one year, and so that was like the first story. It's kind of like multiple stories in the book, but the first story was about that. He has like 5 siblings, but he had like a sister named Tiffany, that was the one who died. So like there's a lot of them. He has a big family. Also, if you didn't know, I didn't know this. I didn't even know who this was, but if you know who Amy Sedaris is, this is her brother. So isn't that an interesting thing? I think so. Look at the Sedarises being fucking successful and shit. Like I just feel like the need to say that this book covers those dark topics of death and talking about that. Like, it talks a lot about his like regrets when it comes to Tiffany. Like, it had this one specific story. I'm not going to say what it is, just because like if you want to read this, you should probably do that and find out on your own. But there was this one specific thing that he just like deeply regrets about like when it comes to his sister, and it talked about that, but then that was somehow mixed with this dark comedy and humor that was done so well. He'll bring up something serious like that, and then the next one it's like lighthearted. There's a lot of things that made me literally laugh out loud, and I was like, this is really fucking funny. I read it with an audiobook. It's read by the author. Some of the stories, it was him doing the audiobook, but it was like a performance, and you could tell because there was an audience, and I thought those were so fucking good. And it just makes me so excited to read more David Sedaris. And still speaking about David Sedaris, Me Talk Pretty One Day is a book that I have on my list of books to read. So this book basically is just, it follows him in Paris when he is like learning how to speak French. He's like taking these French classes. And basically that's it. I assume that it's going to be pretty comical. It's really cool because in Theft by Finding, the diaries from 1977 to 2002, he talks about it, and then like he talks about him literally experiencing it because that's what was happening in his life. And then later on he'll talk about like Me Talk Pretty One Day and how it's like a book like coming to be or like being published or whatever the fuck. And I'm like, okay, that's really fucking interesting and really cool. And then we get to read all these things that you're talking about, all these projects that you talk about in your diaries. That's cool to me. I'm actually really glad that I read Theft by Finding first, even though I read that in one sitting, and he literally in the beginning suggests that you don't read the diaries in one sitting, but I did. And I'm kind of glad that I'm not gonna say I'm glad that I read it in all one sitting, but I'm glad that I read those before. I feel like that was like a preface to David Sedaris' life, right? And then like everything else just makes sense. Does that make sense? That was a lot about David Sedaris. Okay, moving on to the next book, I suppose. The next book I have is a lovely, lovely book that I will fucking cherish forever. When I was reading this, I was like, wow, this is an instant 5 stars.
This is a 5-star. I already know.
I was like, God, I'm in love with Rachel Bloom. I just had so many emotions about this fucking book. A nonfiction book just doing that to me. Can I just say, though, this is Rachel Bloom. Hello, if you don't know her, she's an actress. She's the creator for this show called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is a comfort show of mine. And she plays this person named Rebecca Bunch. This is about her actual fucking life. That literally reads like a sitcom. Holy shit. This book made me fucking laugh out loud, and it teared me up a bit, and it made me feel closer to Rachel Bloom and love her even more than I thought I could. And I was like, if anybody should be writing a fucking memoir or something about their lives, it's this motherfucker. It's her right here. Are you kidding? For example, she didn't like go poop into a toilet until she was 4 years old, and she would just go to her like parents and be like, can I have a diaper? So she would shit in a diaper. She mentions musicals a ton in here. There was Dear Evan Hansen, there was Rent, there was Hamilton. Like, I love me some musical references, okay? And then, of course, she talked about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. She talked a little bit about behind the scenes, a little bit about how it was going. It talked about how many times it got rejected until the CW took it. And I'm just like, that's like my favorite show, and I'm just so, like, it's so crazy. Well, I don't want to say it's my favorite show, but it's one of my favorite shows, and it's just like, I just love seeing that, you know what I mean? There was a part that I really liked, that it was like a whole entire musical, and it was like, go to racheldoesthings.com and like listen to it to get the full immersive experience. It was everything. It was everything. I loved the mixed media elements. Not a solitary bored moment for me. Not a solitary one. That's saying something. For me, that's saying something. I never wanted this book to end. Like, I want her to write more. I don't think I would ever be able to get enough of this individual. She also talks about how she has OCD, and she calls it the bad, and I'm just like, I understand, I get it. It's just so interesting to instead call it OCD. She like had like a bunch of synonymous like euphemisms for it, and I was just like, I get that, especially because when she was in 4th grade, like her OCD symptoms kind of came out, and she didn't know what it was, you know. She was just like, this is an ick feeling. This is a bad feeling. So she started calling it the bad. And I'm like, that's so it. Like, that's, yeah. Also, if you haven't noticed this little sticker here, signed edition, yeah. Whatever. Rachel Bloom fucking signed this. That just makes this book even just that much more important to me. Like I said, this is like literally an instant 5-star. I was like, Rachel Bloom can do no wrong. She's so creative. She's so funny. She deserves all the hype. If you haven't seen her YouTube channel, literally go like look up Rachel Bloom, and she has like a shit ton of music videos on her channel. A lot of them are from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but then before she did Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, she has a ton of music videos like down there, and I used to watch those all the time because I again cannot get enough of this woman. So if you also can't get enough of Rachel Bloom, I suggest doing that and reading this and watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and etc. etc. Okay, and then the last 2 books that I have are kind of in the same vein as Rachel Bloom, but like not, but they're definitely in the same vein as each other. In more ways than one. One being that I have not read either of them, and another being that they are just like comedians writing memoirs. So basically I have Tina Fey here and Amy Poehler here. I actually did start this book. I got to page 73. I was reading it with an audiobook, and it was read by her, and I really love that, of course. And then there's this Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, and I want to read this soon. I also got this at Goodwill, but I really want to read this soon. It's like a 5-hour audiobook, and I'm pretty sure this is written by her, or read by her. So all that is very exciting, and I'm sure that these are going to make me laugh. And if these individual people do make you laugh at all, then maybe check out these memoirs. I feel like my list was a little lackluster, but hey, what can you expect from, again, a novice nonfiction reader? Hopefully next year I will have book after book after book to recommend for you for this exact video. If you have any suggestions of nonfiction books that you think I should read, leave them in the comments. And if you have any favorite nonfiction books, leave those titles in the comments. I hope you all have a grand day. Thanks for checking this video out. I'll see you next time. Oh, I just hit myself.